Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. We got Julia, Adam, Toby from the Podium Finish, and Jessica join us from Paddock Inside. We're going to be discussing MotoGP, F1, NASCAR, plus a World Ride Championship update. A big thank you to our Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark and Rob, for keeping us on the air all year long right here on the Grid Network. You too can invest in the Grid Network. And be sure to follow us on Buy Me a Coffee, where you can buy us a coffee, a one-time contribution. If you prefer to do that, or get a coffee for your favorite on-air account right here in the Grid Network. And a big hello to our Ultimate Sports Radio Network listeners, USRN. Jessica, Julia, 2022 MotoGP season, starting off the European leg of the season in Portugal, Spain, France, and Italy between this weekend and the end of May. So it's going to be a lot of racing. This is where many people anticipate the big factory teams to essentially start getting the wins, because it's surprising. The factory team of Ducati, Honda, Suzuki, and Yamaha still looking for their first win. Aprilia, KTM, they have the wins. Gresini Racing, 2 wins, with Bastianini getting those two. Jessica, starting with you, do you believe the factory teams that are winless will win most of the race between now and Italy in Mugello?
I think the performance must be constant. There will be no difference between the circuits outside of Europe. Once again, a satellite team took the pole position, and it must be a fairly intensive and deep analysis that the main teams and their drivers must to do about why they are missing to catch up with the formats and all the satellites. Suzuki and Honda got closer, but it wasn't enough. Joan Mir has been the most constant today, and that will be the confidence to what they have been doing these first races. The main teams must already be confident to start winning and be constant in the top of position.
So I think it's very possible that, this factory teams will finally get their win. I mean, we have Marc Marquez and Fabio Quartararo, who really has a pace, but something just sometimes don't work for them, like today when their lap times were cancelled. But definitely, it is sometimes said that European starts a completely new season sometimes. Today it's maybe it was a crazy qualifying because of the conditions, but it was quite a proof, seeing Enea Bastianini and Alex Rins, who are top two in the championships right now, literally being on the back of the grid tomorrow. So it's gonna be surprising, but this season shows how MotoGP is really, competitive right now, because this it almost in many cases it happens that it doesn't matter if you are a Nea Bastianini in satellite team or you are Pecco Bagnaia in factory team. You still can win and you still can be a championship leader, or it doesn't matter if you're an Alex Rins in Suzuki, a factory bike. You are still, like today, you are behind Darren Binder, for example, who's a rookie from Moto2 in satellite Yamaha, who's one of the worst teams. So MotoGP is crazy. Many depends on the conditions. And European is sometimes something very different with different conditions. And then the races we have, for example, in Indonesia. But yeah, it's hard to say because everything is possible. But for sure, Ducati, Yamaha, they are all sick in their first win. And, even though Joan Zarco is in the pole position, he's sick in his first win, it is not impossible that tomorrow maybe we're going to see Joan Mir on the top step of the podium, Fabio Quartararo, who likes Algarve track, or maybe even Marc Marquez. Who knows?
As you said, who knows? This season of MotoGP has been spectacular. A lot of surprises early on. Seems like the surprises are still coming. They're not slowing down. And those factory teams, they're going to get faster and faster. The question is, of course, will they be contending for the wins more and more with this European League? Because as you mentioned, and Josh mentioned as well too, it seems something very different once they start the European leg and those bigger teams start to come in play. I think I gotta agree. I think the Suzuki seem to be right up there. Mir, I just can mention the confidence seems to be there. They got a better bike compared to last year. He's towards the front. Quartararo, he is up there, surprisingly quick. And of course, as you mentioned, we saw Marc Marquez. I mean, yesterday he was the fastest in free practice one. Then free practice two, his teammate Paul Espargaro was the fastest, and Marquez was second. However, today with the mixed conditions, that played a lot of havoc because we saw Paul Espargaro, go down. That essentially negated Marc Marquez's fast time from pole to ninth. But we also saw, as we talked a little bit, Bagnaia. He is starting last place. Rins, he's only 2 spots ahead of him. Then, of course, Paul crashing in Q2. So, very unpredictable qualifying with the mixed conditions. Julia, considering the impressive performance of Marc Marquez at Circuits of America the last race weekend, you mentioned he could potentially be a contender for the win. Do you think he's a legitimate favorite for this Sunday's race, or do you believe there's going to be other riders like Miguel Oliveira or the ones that have more racing experience on the circuit have an advantage?
Well, it's hard for me to say if he's the legitimate, the top contender for the win, because he is still starting from P9. But if you've seen if the viewers have seen many previous pre-race shows here, I always say that this is Marc Marquez. You cannot uncount him even if he falls like at Coda on the last place, and then he's magically in the P6, almost being able to fight for the win. So I think if Marc tomorrow will be he will be the Marc Marquez we've always seen. Like, he was forced to be this Marc Marquez at Coda. I think he may go in hard, as always, and try to win this. I mean, he has the pace here. It's not being said that, of course, wet conditions are the conditions that Marc Marquez is just like a king in there. And then qualifying was on, almost dry, a little wet conditions. But he still did good. If not Paul, he would have started P4, which was a really good lap. So I think he has a pace to win. What is his advantage is that, he's always fighting for this victory, even if he falls in the last place. And it may be the factor that's going to help him. But it's hard to say how he's going to, behave after that crash in FP3 when he, then he didn't want to ride too much on the track. In FP4, he did only 2 laps. He was really restraining himself from it. So we'll have to just see. But honestly, if we're gonna see the Marc Marquez we've seen at Coda, we can expect him to fight for the podium, for the win, because he is really sick in it. He said that P6 after a comeback from another diplopia is not bad, but he still is seeking for this podium and victory because he's seen it coming at Coda, if not this problem at the start. So you can never uncount Marc Marquez.
I think it's not possible to speak of an advantage considering the physical condition of Marquez today. He's already had crashes this weekend in Portugal, and the raining conditions didn't help him. So it's an internal struggle that he himself has, but it has been very hard for him to get back in shape. But we know, Marc Marquez, we know all the things he can do. So I think it is very difficult to say is an advantage for Marc Marquez, but his physical condition and the eye conditions with the vision is really difficult to say that for Marc Marquez.
Marc Marquez, you bring up his condition. That's going to be a question a lot of people are going to be asking as they're watching the race throughout tomorrow. What kind of shape is he in? And can he really be a contender for the win? It's going to be really interesting. If he puts on a show like he did at Coda, he could be up towards the front. But he has to run a perfect race. He's starting ninth. He can't afford the mistake of like falling back to last like Labin Coda because up front, Johan Zarco, he took the pole under the mixed conditions. And then we have Alicia Spargo. He got the front row. And of course, we know Bastianini way in the back. So when it comes to the championship, this could really tighten up the championship battle. And then Jack Miller, Fabio Quartararo, they round out your top five. And this weekend, a lot of stories have been, besides being back in Europe, the rumors of Fabio Quartararo and his future with Yamaha. Yamaha is one of the best handling bikes, but it's slow compared to Ducati, Honda, and Suzuki, which last year Suzuki did not have the speed. This year they do. For 2023, only Marc Marquez, Pecco Bagnaia, and Franco Morbidelli, plus Brad Binder at KTM, have a seat for next year. Everyone else, it's up in the air. So along with Fabio Quartararo, what's going to happen with Mir? What's going to happen to Rins? That means the entire Suzuki team could be up for grabs. It's really interesting. Starting with you, Jessica. Is Fabio Quartararo the number one rider teams are trying to get? Or is that Juan Mir? Or is there another rider that shows a lot of potential?
Fabio Quartararo has had many confidence problems with his Yamaha. Without that, with Maverick Vinales, the last season with Yamaha, and he has a driver victory, but has been what he has been seen to suffer in the race. The Suzuki have the more confidence that helps Joan Mir and his other driver Alex Rins. I think Fabio Quartararo have to study how can be more comfortable with his bike in Yamaha if they can repeat the championship this year. So I think if Quartararo had a lot of problems to the Yamaha, and this is not from this year. Without that, with Valentino Rossi, without that, with Jorge Lorenzo, without that, with Maverick Vinales, and I think it's a problem with Yamaha. So I think a problem for Quartararo. I don't think to stay in Yamaha the next years.
What can I say? I mean, it's like let the season begin because we have for 24 riders, we have only 4 with established contracts for next season. So it's gonna be a really crazy, silly season. Fabio Quartararo, I think, and Joan Mir maybe one of the top riders that some teams may try to get. As far as I know, it's mostly a thing of Fabio Quartararo's manager. He is contacting other teams, talking to other teams, and for now, Fabio is just now focusing on his job because he's still at Yamaha and he's trying to do his best at Yamaha to, advance his performance because it definitely could have been better. He really wants to defend his championship, and so far it's not looking that well for him. Of course, Jean Muir is also one of the top riders, even though the last season at Suzuki but wasn't that good, but it was mostly a Suzuki problem. So yeah, it's been said that Honda may be trying to look into getting Fabio to them or getting Joan to Honda, but there's still a thing. So if they want to give up on Paul, or which seems crazy, and for me it's just not. It's almost impossible to restrain Marquez contract, and I think this is not possible because Marquez is still the best Honda, even though he wasn't in 2 races. And it's a new bike that was supposed to be not made for him but for Paul and others, but he's still the best Honda. But I think that teams are looking into which rider can help them improve their performance if they are not going good. Or I think some teams are just gonna stay with the riders they trust in, and is also what Ducati is gonna do, because they have now so many young riders in the satellite team, and there is a spot in the factory team. If it's gonna be Jorge Martin, or if Jack's gonna stay at Ducati's factory team, or maybe Enea Bastianini, and there we have a free spot either in Garcini or in Pramac. So it's really, really hard to predict. But for now, as far as now, Fabio is just focusing on his work with Yamaha, because he's been with a Yamaha for a long time. It was his dream to be in a Yamaha, to win a championship in Yamaha, what he did. But as far as I've heard, his manager is looking into the other option, because this is his job. I think this is gonna be a really interesting case, mostly at the end of the season, when we're gonna see if Fabio is gonna be able to defend his championship, if Joan Mir is gonna do a good job. If Paul Espargaro, for example, is gonna be given up on by Honda, because he's not doing the job he was supposed to, with a new bike that was made in the front mostly for him. And at the beginning, he was really happy with it when Marquez was struggling. And then there may be a free spot at Honda. It's really hard to say, especially as we said, we have only 4 riders with sure contracts. And then we have technically we can say we have 20 free spots, and we still have Moto2. So I think we need to just look into it and maybe wait until the halfway of the season and, the September, October to see it. But, let the season still on begin, and the rumors are still flying on.
The silly season has begun, as you said, and I think MotoGP is going to be one of the most fun silly seasons to follow this year. 20 spots is just amazing. And when it comes to the riders, I think you bring up a good point with Bastianini. We got Martin. Where would those two end up? Those two plus Quartararo, the defending champion, Mir, those could really set some big pieces. What I think is going to be really interesting with Quartararo, I think he won't be so keen to go into Honda, because we know Marc Marquez is going to be there. He's really going to have to prove he is worthy of being sort of the number 1 rider. And then when it comes to Suzuki, you don't have that. Ducati, we know Pecco's going to be there. That might be something more ideal for Bastianini, Martin, Jack Miller. If he could pull off a couple wins, now he could try to secure that spot with the factory team. This is going to be a really interesting, silly season. Very exciting. Of course, MotoGP, the Portuguese Grand Prix, is tomorrow morning. And we, of course, want to thank Jessica and Julia for their time. Of course, both of them, links to their Twitter and media outlet as well.
That's right, Joe. Jessica, Julia, we appreciate you as always. Now it's time for the MotoGP pick a winner. And let our viewers know, use hashtag pick a winner on social media, and you can see yourself on the leaderboard second to last Saturday in the month of April. So only 2 more chances to get your first point to be a double point if you're not on our leaderboard. With that being said, it's time for Jessica and Julia to make their picks for the MotoGP Portuguese Grand Prix. I'll start with you, Jessica. Who wins the MotoGP Portuguese Grand Prix tomorrow morning?
I think the winner will be Joan Mir with his Suzuki.
I agree with Jessica. I think it may be Joan Mir.
Here, that's going to be really exciting to see. Tomorrow, of course, Grid Life Wrap-Up will recap the race. And, of course, once again, Julia, Jessica, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you all, and we encourage everyone to follow them on Twitter as well as all their social media platforms.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, you got it, ladies.
And with that, we'll switch to a World Rally Championship update. Yesterday, the first 8 stages for World Rally Croatia were completed, and we saw Kali Rovanpera take the lead. Thierry Neuville and Antonic were second and third. in the Hyundai cars. Today, stage 9 through 16, and we saw Rovanpera continue to lead, but this time Tonic has gone up to second place, but he's still 13 seconds behind. So despite Rovanpera not winning a single stage today, he still has such a huge lead to Tonic. Tomorrow will be the final set of stages where we'll see who's going to win Rally Croatia. And of course, as we mentioned, the top three as of this moment is still the same. Rovanpera, Tonic, and Breen are your top three at Rally Croatia.
And next, moving on to Formula One, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix weekend is here with a sprint race that finished up a little while ago. Qualifying saw Max Verstappen lead 5 different teams in the top 5. Talk about parity with Ferrari, McLaren, Haas, and Alpine with Fernando Alonso that followed. All started up front for today's sprint. In the end, Max Verstappen took the win with a late pass over Charles Leclerc. Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz complete the top 4. You're gonna have Verstappen and his teammate behind him at the start of tomorrow's race. Leclerc and Sainz on the other side. So Red Bull up front, Red Bull behind, then Ferrari beside, and then Ferrari behind. Starting with you, Adam, is this going to be the Ferrari versus Red Bull battle we've been waiting for, assuming Red Bull has made some improvements in reliability?
Last year it was Red Bull versus Mercedes. This year you replace Mercedes with Ferrari. This is what the fans have wanted, and I think it's what the fans are going to get tomorrow in Imola. Especially, it's in Italy. You know the Tifosi for Ferrari are going to be out there in full, in their red and black, cheering on Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz Jr. easily. And we saw a dramatic battle in the sprint race between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. And I truly thought Charles Leclerc was going to win. But that DRS helped Max Verstappen, and he got around Leclerc in the last few laps to take the victory today. So tomorrow, it's going to be an intense battle between Oracle Red Bull and Scuderia Ferrari. Get your popcorn ready, because the race tomorrow is going to be an awesome one.
I have to agree. It's going to be an awesome race tomorrow. These two teams, they are showing they are the class of the F1 field. Mercedes, they're not there. Everybody else way behind. It's going to really come down to who's going to have the best race for the pair of drivers, not just one driver, because here's the key. Whoever the first place driver is, the best scenario for them is their teammate is in second place. You can't afford having your teammate in third place, because if that's the case, you're going to get outnumbered. But now if you have that fourth car, whether it's any one of the Ferraris or the Red Bulls, that's going to just equalize it. And I think this is really set up for a fantastic race between those two four. So it's really going to come down to the teams ensuring that not just their lead driver has a great setup, a great car. They really got to go in there as if either driver are going out there for the win. I mean, if you look at the driver's points, Sergio Perez is right now ahead of Max Verstappen. Not a lot of people predicted that. Of course, that's because of the double DNFs Verstappen had. But Sergio Perez, he cannot have a slow pit stop. He cannot have a bad start. He needs to be up there with the pace, because if it's Leclerc up front and Verstappen second, if he's in third place, pressure on. If roles reversed and it was Perez leading somehow, if Verstappen's in third place, they got to treat it as if, okay, Perez is going out there for the win. You can't compromise this race. And same with Sainz. If he somehow ends up in the lead, you're not going to compromise this race to try to get Charles Leclerc to win if the Red Bulls are there. So it's going to be a really interesting race and a big test for the teams and the strategists.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a big test, and I think it's going to be an even bigger test for Red Bull. That it's going to be Ferrari, as I mentioned, their reliability so far this season hasn't been is exactly great, with Max Verstappen already having two DNFs in three races, which is really crazy for the defending champion, the defending world champion. Excuse me, put a little more respect on Max's name there of Formula One, and I think this will be the battle we've been waiting for if Red Bull can find some improvements. But I really think that in order for Max to truly get back in the championship fight, it's still early, so anything can happen. I think he's going to need Charles Leclerc to have some bad luck, have some retirements and stuff, and Max is going to score max points with Charles Leclerc having some issues. Otherwise, if Charles Leclerc and Ferrari keep going strong and don't have any issues, it's really going to be tough for Max Verstappen to try to catch up and match his pace. And the sprint race had one safety car in the short 21 lap event. When Zhou Guanyu and Pierre Gasly made contact, Aston Martin fell back to 15th and 13th, but in between them was Lewis Hamilton in 14th, George Russell only 11th. The two Haas cars, the worst team last season, finished ahead of the two Mercedes. And here's my question for you, Joe. If Ferrari and Red Bull don't stumble, does it look like Mercedes might be in trouble with championship hopes slipping away for drivers and team with a slow car?
I believe so. Especially a lot of folks were anticipating Mercedes were going to come back a little bit faster. They showed signs of progress in the last race, but that has not happened. If anything, yes, we saw the bad luck of 5 red flags. They didn't get a chance to put another lap, but that Mercedes is not coming out of the pits fast enough. It's taking them a couple of laps to get to that top speed, and when you have a situation like we did with qualifying, they didn't make the top 10, and then in the sprint race, they were just not a factor at all. Yes, Russell got to 11th place. That's a great effort. But Hamilton's 14th. I don't see the Ferraris have not shown any weakness so far yet this season. That could always change. If they don't stumble, I do not see how Mercedes is going to climb up to be in contention for the constructors. I think their streak is going to come to an end. That's a very sure thing. When it comes to the Drivers' Championship, yeah, we know Russell's up there in the points. He's been consistent. But again, if we don't have craziness up front, like for instance, if for some reason we see the two Red Bulls and the two Ferraris take out each other early on in the race, I don't even see Mercedes contending for the win. You're going to see probably the McLaren, or I hate to say this, a Haas. Both Haas's in the top 10. So it's going to be really odd this race if for some reason we don't see the Red Bulls and the Ferraris up front, if they go out, contact, whatever. But I don't anticipate Mercedes to be the next team to go in there and get the win. It's going to be a McLaren. So I think it's not only slipping away, I'm saying the Constructor Championship is out of reach. It's over for them. If I'm wrong, last show I don't know what I'll do, but I think the constructor is out of the picture, and for Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, it's starting to get dimmer and dimmer their chances.
Yeah, it's called if Mercedes doesn't have a good weekend, if Mercedes doesn't have a good race tomorrow, I don't see them contending for the Constructor Championship or even the Drivers' Championship. They're going to have to finish at least in the top 10. And that goes for both Mercedes drivers, because right now it's Red Bull versus Ferrari. Mercedes right now, yeah, they may be second in the Constructor Championship. But I think Red Bull and or Ferrari are going to have to slip up somewhere. And from what I've seen so far, I don't anticipate that happening whatsoever. I think this year it's Red Bull versus Ferrari, not only for the Constructor Championship, but the Drivers' Championship as well.
And I gotta say this, Adam. I think Mercedes are in trouble right now. I understand it's early in the season, and in the previous races to start off the 2022 campaign, I was saying that by Imola, I need to see some improvement in Mercedes before I want to write them off. And right now, it doesn't look like they had the pace. To be honest, I was very shocked by the pace we saw by Mercedes. I thought they were going to be closer to Ferrari and Red Bull, but it's really shocking that I'm saying this. But Mercedes is clearly a midfield team now. It's crazy after all the years of domination. now Mercedes is really performing like a midfield team. Will they get faster later on in the season? Who knows? But right now, it's looking like it's gonna be a really tough year for the Silver Arrows. And seeing the Haas cars that were the worst on the grid last year, beating both George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, that's a tough pill to swallow. And I'm sure a lot of us didn't expect to say I bet Valtteri Bottas is actually happy to be in an Alfa Romeo instead of a Mercedes, because he outperformed both Russell and Hamilton in this sprint race. So Valtteri Bottas, it looks like he might end up getting the better end of the deal here, leaving Mercedes and what's looking to be a potentially down year for the organization. I think it might be a humbling year for Lewis Hamilton as well, because Lewis Hamilton is not used to this. He's used to being up front fighting for the wins all the time, and I think it's gonna be interesting to see how he adjusts his attitude, potentially competing in the midfield all year round, because in Imola, Mercedes hasn't showed the pace this weekend, and this might be a sign of things to come, where race after race might be a struggle for them. They might be able to improve the car later in the season, and maybe get a podium here and there with some things happening. But overall, right now, I don't see Mercedes in the constructors fight. I don't see them competing for the drivers' championship right now, and I just don't see them really contending. So I guess back to the drawing board with them. And in the sprint race, Charles Leclerc got off to a great start. He led the most laps, but it was Verstappen who got by at the end. Of course, no pit stops today, been a shorter race, but that's back in play tomorrow with the normal race, plus all the different tire strategies that really makes Formula One so unique. Which factor will be most important tomorrow, and what's shaping up to be a Ferrari versus Red Bull duel?
To me, one of the key things is we didn't see any pit stops in the sprint race today, but we will too. But we will see pit stops tomorrow. And I think having a good pit stop is going to be a definite key to win this race. And you mentioned tire strategies. That's another thing that is going to be a key to win this race tomorrow. You're going to have to, Red Bull and Ferrari are going to have really good pit stops throughout the race, and don't stumble during pit stops, and don't stumble out on track. Otherwise, if Red Bull falters, Ferrari could run away with this race. It's in Imola, Italy. I mentioned the Tifosi. You know who they're pulling for tomorrow. You know who they want to see on the podium. They want to see a Ferrari 1-2 tomorrow. And to me, that could happen. But like I said, the two keys are going to be a really good pit stop and tire strategy to make last all throughout this race.
Very good points, as you mentioned, Adam. Those are the two biggest keys, because if you have a slow pit stop, even just one slow pit stop, if it's the first one, it could be a one-stop race. You're behind, and now your job just got harder. The one thing I would also add to your points of the tires and the strategy is when it comes to the start of the race. You need to have that lead driver, whereas Leclerc or Verstappen, have a great start and hope that other driver gets a good start. Can you imagine? We saw today, Leclerc had a great start, took the lead. If he could bring Sainz to be in that third place position ahead of Perez, upper hand Ferrari, despite if Perez is in fourth. Roles reverse, it could be upper hand Red Bull. The strategy, they're going to be working their tails off throughout this race if you have those four up front in whatever order. And with the tire selections, this is where I'm really curious. Are we going to see one team put both drivers on the same tire, just try to do the undercut, overcut, depending on what the other team do? Or are we going to see one team or both teams put another driver on a different set of tires in case they end up fourth place, try to stay out there really long, make it that one stop? I think this is going to be a fascinating race. These two teams, they look near even. When it comes to DRS, we saw that was a big factor in getting around Leclerc today. So I think the start is going to be very important. As Adam mentioned, you got to have good pit stops. You got to have the right tire selection because if you put on a bad tire selection at the start and you just lose position, especially if you fall behind a McLaren, you got that one DRS zone on the main straight that seems to be the best place to pass, and you're going to lose a lot of time and the race for you and the team.
Oh yeah, Joe, definitely, and it's interesting you're talking about the different tire choice. Cause I was just reading an article on motorsports.com while you guys were talking about Kevin Magnussen, and he said that Haas made a mistake with their tire choice after slipping from fourth to eighth after seeing everybody else start on the softer tire compound. So tire choice is going to be very important in tomorrow's race. And you guys mentioned the pit stops. That's really going to be important. I think pit stop, of course, in any racing series, pit stops are super important. But I think with how fast Formula One pit stops are, it's most crucial in this particular series. You know, sometimes 2-3 second stops in Formula One, really crazy how fast they're able to get those tires on and send the driver on their way out of the pits, and even just like a half a second mistake can be the difference between finishing on the podium and finishing fourth. And yeah, it's certainly going to be quite an intriguing Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola tomorrow morning here in the United States. And now shifting gears from Imola to the track that's the most dangerous on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. That's it, Talladega Super Speedway. After the wild card race that was Bristol Dirt last week, another wild card race this weekend, and an opportunity for someone to pull off an upset win at Talladega and lock themselves into the playoffs. Qualifying just wrapped up a short while ago, and Christopher Bell for Joe Gibbs Racing won the pole, and some of the notable top 10 qualifiers, really quite a mix of Toyotas, with Martin Truex Jr. starting up front on the front row. Kurt Busch, Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin all made the final round of qualifying. So Toyota is really looking strong rolling off the truck. And something that's interesting this year with the super speedways outside of the Daytona 500, there is no practice, just one lap for qualifying, and that's it. So I think one of the biggest surprises in qualifying to me that it hindered motorsports cars, which typically bring extremely fast cars on the super speedways. They just did not have the pace for the pole at all. And I'm wondering if that has anything to do with lack of qualifying, so they weren't able to find the little things to help make their cars go faster. So this is quite different. Just rolling onto the track just like that for one lap to just see what you got, and qualifying at these super speedway tracks don't really matter much anyway, since it's so random and unpredictable. And here's my question for you guys. Are the Toyotas showing they can potentially control the race like the Fords did in the Daytona 500?
I would say yes, they are, and that's what they're going to plan to do. They're going to try to organize themselves, try to single file it, and run that high line. It might stink up the show. The big key is going to be, can they get organized fast enough? Because we know if as they're trying to organize fast enough, they're all pretty close together. It should be pretty easy. Once you get spread out or separate, that's where it's going to get really hard. And I think what's going to be really interesting is what's going to happen behind them. Where you see the Fords, all of them try to organize. This is going to be interesting first few laps because I don't think it's going to be everyone trying to go up towards the front, but it's just more. If you see the Toyotas, they're starting to organize early in that first lap. You're going to hear the radios, the crew chiefs. Okay, find your teammates, find your other Fords, find your other Chevys. Let's line up, see what we could do. The big thing, of course, if they start going to that high line, running up the outside wall, single file, that's going to be most of stage one, and then it's going to come down to the pit stop. So that's Toyota's intention. How will they execute is going to be a big one because there's less Toyotas compared to Fords. There's less Toyotas compared to Chevys. Chevys and Ford has the strengths and size numbers. This was a disadvantage in the 2021 Daytona 500. I think could be a disadvantage for them if they're not careful enough with organizing.
I completely agree with everything you said, Joe. And there are 5 Toyotas starting in the top 10. What team stands out to you in this top 10? The team that we're about to talk about, 2311 Racing, has both of their cars starting in the top 10. We know how good they are at these super speedway races. It may have been a rain-shortened race last year at Talladega, but who won? Bubba Wallace. What car does he drive? A Toyota. he hasn't had a good start to this season. Neither has Kurt Busch. Overall, 2311 Racing hasn't had a good start to this year. How cool would it be to see a 2311 Racing 1-2 tomorrow at Talladega with either Kurt Busch or Bubba Wallace taking the victory? Those Toyotas are going to be hard to beat tomorrow because, like you mentioned, Joe, everyone's going to be looking for their manufacturer partner all day long, whether it's Toyota, Ford, or Chevrolet. So expect a key strategy is going to be to find your manufacturer friends all day long, and it's a wild card, and it's going to be crazy. Anybody can win this race. It don't matter where you start. It's where, and we mentioned the start finish line isn't in the tri-oval. It's 1,800 feet right past the tri-oval, so anything can happen between the tri-oval and coming to take the checkered flag.
Yeah, anybody can win at Talladega, whether you're starting first or you're starting last. And it's really crazy how the draft works because on lap one you can start in the very back, and by the start of the second lap you're running in the top 20. That's how crazy the starts are at these super speedway events. And I don't know if I'd go as far as Joe said, that Toyota might stink up the show, but they're definitely going to try to organize at the front so they can control the early portions of the race, and the things that can really change things are the pit strategies when we're seeing the Toyotas pitting together, and then the Chevys pitting together, and then the Fords pitting together themselves, and then on pit road need to make sure, like we were just talking about in Formula One, don't make those mistakes, because if you have a slow pit stop when you're coming with your group, you lose the draft, you're gonna be in trouble and might find yourself eventually going a lap down. So when you come to pit road with your drafting partners, you need to make sure you're leaving with your drafting partners, so you're not caught out in in some trouble. And speaking of sting up the show, I'm sure you guys remember the Talladega race several years ago when the 4 Stewart Haas racing cars basically stunk up the entire show at Talladega. They just ran single file at the front, controlled the entire race. So it's certainly possible the Toyotas could do the same thing, but based on what we saw in the Daytona 500, I think we could see a really crazy race. And one notable driver everyone will be following this weekend is Bubba Wallace in 2311 Racing. They won last time we were at Talladega in the fall, and he finished second place in the Daytona 500 earlier this year and had a strong run going at Atlanta in contention for the win until he crashed at the finish. The rest of the season for Bubba, besides that close but no cigar at the Daytona 500, season's really been forgettable. Just one top 5, one top 10, and an average finish of 21st place. If Bubba doesn't get the win this weekend, it's 2311 Racing starting to look like they could be in trouble.
Absolutely. And I just mentioned that 2311 Racing is starting in the top 10. And Bubba Wallace is, last time we were at Talladega, Bubba Wallace won. So you don't think he wants to go out there and win after the year he's had so far this year? He's always a contender on the super speed races. It does, especially at Daytona and Talladega. He wants to win tomorrow. Most definitely he wants to win tomorrow for 2311 Racing. And can say, hey, we won last year here at Talladega. It may have been rain shortened, but we won. Tomorrow's weather can be absolutely gorgeous in Sweet Home, Alabama. So there won't be any rain affecting this race. So Bubba Wallace wants to go out there and prove that he can win in the sunshine as well at Talladega, as well as a rain shortened race compared to last year. And if it's going toward the end, hopefully Kurt Busch will help his teammate win. But you never know, because you got to be at the right place at the right time at Talladega.
as you mentioned, Adam, timing, being in the right place in the right time is a big factor in Talladega. Bubba Wallace had a fast car all last time in Talladega during the playoff race. He put himself in the position to win. Even if we went back racing again, I still think he would be a favorite to win. I say favorite because we know the last lap, sometimes in Talladega, you push a little too hard and somebody's spinning, that's where it gets too crazy. This is 23XI's best opportunity for a win. And the way their season's going, if they don't get a win this weekend, the month of May, I don't think is going to present tracks that are looking good for them. It, of course, goes to the Coca-Cola 600, the longest race of the year. We got Texas, there's the All-Star race break, the Coca-Cola 600. But then when you look at June, we're going to have a new racetrack, Worldwide Technology Gateway Raceway. The road courses, they're not exactly the greatest at the road course. And then Nashville Super Speedway, which is a 1.5-mile oval, the Ally 400 there. So really, it's going to be a hard stretch for them. The one thing, we talked about the Super Speedway package. It's not a Super Speedway package, but in July, the weekend after the 4th of July, the Quaker State 400 at Atlanta Motor Speedway, they ran really strong there. So if they don't get a win this weekend, that'll be a huge break for the team. But it won't do them over because I think the Quaker State 400 at Atlanta Motor Speedway will be their other best opportunity. But they have to really go all out for the win because May looks rough for them. June doesn't look that great. It's really going to come down in July. And then after Atlanta, that's where we have New Hampshire, Pocono, Indianapolis. August gets us to Michigan, Richmond, where Richmond, they were nowhere with pace. Watkins Glen, and then Daytona, the lottery race to get in. And then we're already in the playoffs. So time is starting to run out for 23XI.
I said, well, Joe, looking at 23XI racing as a whole, I don't necessarily think they're in big trouble, but I think Bubba Wallace could be in big trouble if he doesn't get a win at Talladega this weekend. As I've been saying, besides the Daytona 500, it just hasn't gone well at all for the number 23 team. And Bubba knows that, you know, having Kurt Busch as his teammate this year in the second year with 23XI racing, he knows that he's going to have to perform a lot better than an average finish of 21st place, and at least try to be an outside contender for the playoffs this year. And with their current form, I don't really see that happening. But I do agree with your point. If Bubba doesn't win at Talladega this weekend, there's really only two realistic chances. I think he has a winning this year would be Atlanta in the summer, and then the final race before the playoffs, as you mentioned, the lottery race to get in to the playoffs at Daytona International Speedway. So I think if he doesn't get the job done this weekend at Talladega, then in Atlanta and Daytona are probably going to be his next best options. And I don't necessarily think Kurt Busch is in trouble because Kurt Busch has been able to get some results outside of the super speedway style tracks this year and get clicked off a few good finishes for 23XI racing. And Kurt Busch is a solid road racer, so I don't think the road courses are going to be as big a struggle for Kurt Busch as is for Bubba Wallace, who openly admits that road course racing is his weakness as a race car driver. He ran the Xfinity race at Circuit of the Americas to try to get better at the road course. He was running well until he had a mechanical problem, which really took away a lot of the speed in his car that day, and ended up retiring from the Cup race at COTA that weekend as well. So I feel like if this weekend doesn't go well for Bubba, it could certainly be a struggle for him until we get to Atlanta and then Daytona at the end of the season. And as I mentioned, Bubba had a good run going at Atlanta, but a hard hit on the last lap coming to Checker Flat pushed him down to 13th place. He said it was one of the hardest hits he ever took. And at Daytona, we saw Harrison Burton go airborne and flip over on the backstretch. Coming to Talladega, we know it's notorious for the big one, and sometimes cars flipping and catching air. In Friday ARCA practice, Tony Breidinger took a hard hit, and she's going to a backup car for today's race. And the start of the ARCA race broadcast starts on FS1 in just 10 minutes time, so we'll try to hurry up here so all our viewers watching can go enjoy the Marco Menard Series race on the high banks of Talladega. But talking about Talladega in general, do you anticipate another chaotic Cup race with big risks and potentially those airborne crashes? And do you think that's a healthy image for the sport?
When it comes to Talladega, it is the most dangerous track. That's what we started with. And it's the way it's was built for speed, and then the package we have, it just creates this chaotic racing. The way I sort of sometimes think of it, if you look at, like, for example, hockey, you may have a duel where it's just a 0-0 game. You're on the edge of your seat. It comes down to the strategy, and then that one goal, and then you have the game where its score is 10-12, just goal after goal after goal, nonstop excitement. The super speedway, they bring this kind of excitement, this intensity when you have packs of 40 cars, inches apart, one mistake, and you have the big one. I think when it gets a little bit too crazy is when we do see last lap wrecks happening, endless overtimes that just push the race longer and longer into the day. And then the airborne crashes, it may look good on an ad. We've seen them use footage of when Kyle Larson got airborne in Talladega, when Harrison Burton got airborne. It looks good for an ad. It looks good on a newsreel of, like, this is what happened, and gets people talking about it. But we don't want this as something that occurs each and every week. The danger is there, and Talladega puts you on the edge. Overall, I feel with Talladega and the sports image, as long as people keep remembering, this happens at Talladega. This isn't what you're going to see at New Hampshire, Pocono Auto Club. I think it's a fair representation of the sport. If this is the kind of thing we see all the time, or they just push all the time into advertising, that's where I think it gets unhealthy. It sets up that false impression, and then leaves fans, disappointed at the end if their first race was in a Pocono Auto Club Speedway, where we don't get that kind of action. So I think overall, we're going to see a chaotic race. I'm hoping we don't see any cars go airborne. The big one is inevitable, but let's remember, we've had twice, I believe, Talladega go caution-free before the stage era. It would be nice if we only had 2 caution and they were both for stage breaks tomorrow, because I'm pretty sure we'll still have some good racing.
Yeah, as someone who's gone to Talladega like myself, I can say that if you're watching this and you're a NASCAR fan, you have to get to Talladega at least once. If you like what you see on TV, it's pretty cool in person. Are we going to see a chaotic race tomorrow? I think it could happen. We've seen, you mentioned, Joe, we've seen 2 times where we've had caution-free races at Talladega. I don't think that's going to happen tomorrow. We had this new next-gen car. The ratings have been absolutely fabulous so far to start the 2022 NASCAR season. And fans will be tuned in tomorrow. It's one of the, Talladega is a track where you could have 70, 80 lead changes all day long. It's going to be an interesting race tomorrow. And don't forget to, like Kobe mentioned, watch the ARCA Menard Series race on FS1, and at 4 o'clock on Fox. Be sure to watch the NASCAR Xfinity Series as well. As I reported on Grid Tonight last week, Jeffrey Earnhardt is in the number 3 car for RCR Racing. And where does he start for the Xfinity race? On the pole. And who's his crew chief this weekend? Larry McReynolds. It's a homecoming for him since he's from Alabama. And we all know Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to be in the broadcast booth tomorrow. So Talladega is a track where, like people said, anybody can win this race. And now, with that being said, it's now time for Pick a Winner. And we have a lot of races this weekend to choose from. like I mentioned earlier, you use the hashtag pick a winner on social media, and you can see yourself on the leaderboard. With that being said, it's time that we start making our picks. First up, the MotoGP Portuguese Grand Prix. Starting with you, Joe. Who wins?
The $1 million question of MotoGP. I'm going to go to safe route. I'm going to go with Mir. As Julian Jessica said, the Suzuki, the experience he has, I think he's going to get this win.
And for me, I probably need a MotoGP Wheel of Destiny because I admit I'm not a really big MotoGP expert here, but I may end up being the smart one, picking someone different. I may end up looking silly when everyone goes with Mir, but I'm gonna choose different and say Jack Miller wins.
Well, I'm not a MotoGP expert either, but I'm gonna have to agree with Jessica, Julia, and Joe, and I'm gonna say Johan Mir wins tomorrow in Portugal. Next up, we go to the country of San Marino, where Formula One is at Imola. And so I'll start with you, Joe. Does Ferrari win tomorrow in its home country, or do we see another car take the win?
It's another car. It's a Red Bull, and it's Verstappen. He showed the pace today. He's good at starts. Big key. His teammate Perez looks better than last year, but I think it's going to be Red Bull getting a 1-3 finish.
Yeah, and it looks like Ferrari has good getaway speed from the line in the early portions of the race. Good short run car, but it seems like the Red Bull definitely has the car in the long run, and that's what matters the most. I also agree with you, Joe. I think Max Verstappen is going to get it done, and Red Bull's reliability problem, maybe they have it solved.
Well, tomorrow's race is in Italy. I'm going with the Ferrari. I'm going to say Charles Leclerc, and I'm going to say it's a 1-2 for Ferrari, and the Tifosi is going to go absolutely crazy. And now we switch from Imola to sweet home Talladega in Alabama for one of the craziest races on the NASCAR circuit. So I'll start with you, Joe. Who wins tomorrow in Talladega, Alabama?
Ryan Blaney, that number 12, he knows how to get it done. Not the fastest in qualifying, but it's all about the race. Anyone can win it, and he certainly can.
Yeah, all about the race. Qualifying doesn't really matter. And I promise I'm not copying you, Joe, but I also had Ryan Blaney for my pick as well. Ryan Blaney's he's won here at Talladega before, really strong on the super speedways, could have potentially won the Daytona 500 again this year until Austin Cindric kind of squeezed on the wall, although that was his teammate, but I really who wouldn't? It's the Daytona 500. It's some drivers said they were even willing to wreck their own mothers to win that race, but I think after coming close, I think Ryan is due for another Talladega victory.
Well, I'm going with the driver who we talked about earlier on the show, and he hasn't had a good start to the season. So who won last time NASCAR went to Talladega? Yep. I'm going with the number 23 car for 2311 Racing. I'm saying Bubba Wallace wins in Sweet Home Talladega, Alabama. And with that being said, it's now time to wrap up this edition of Grid Live. And be sure to visit our Patreon page. Subscribe and invest in the Grid Network. Or you can go to Buy Me a Coffee. Your investment helps keep Grid Network on the air. And invest by visiting public.com. Use the referral code GRIDnet to get $5 in stocks. Make friends, and you can use tools to invest in the stock market. Own your future. Build your portfolio. Visit public.com. And be sure to comment, like, and subscribe to the Grid Network on YouTube. We're close to 350 subscribers, so we thank each and every one of you for subscribing. Visit Grid Ranking online and follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, including Grid History at grid_history on Twitter. For Joe Samiego and Kobe Lemon from the Podium Finish, I'm Adam Lemery saying thank you for watching and enjoy the races.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.